Ads are dumb. Alright, let's get into the tavern. Hope you guys are ready. This is going to be a really good time. Let's talk Blackrock Mountain. Themes of Blackrock Mountain are obviously dragons and lots of them. We're going to be seeing lots of... on the whole, in the Blackrock Mountain set, we're going to be seeing lots of mid-range cards. It was a very mid-range focused set. When it was totally spoiled today. We don't see, like, really any... There's like maybe 2 or 3 aggro total cards in general out of the 34 or what have you. A lot of them, these new dragons, are mid-range dudes that are just going to be incredibly useful in either creating tempo or creating opportunities for tempo later. This Blackwing Technician is going to be a very important card for these mid-range dragon decks to establish themselves into their strong mid-game. 2/4 with Battle Cry, if you're holding a dragon, gain +1/+1. Having a 3/5 for 3 is going to help dragon decks hold off the aggros. It's going to help them hold off the mech mages or what have you, because then you can trade this in. Turn like, say they have a board that's just a snow chugger. This eats the snow chugger and then it eats something else. That's gonna be amazing to have, and I think this Blackwing Technician is gonna be a super critical card in these dragon-based decks. Outside of that, I don't know how useful it will be if you're not running enough dragons, but I think that we're going to see the trend of lots of dragons, even if they're not the new dragons. If your deck ran Azure Drakes before, and it had a late game bomb dragon like Ysera. Ysera was falling out of popularity lately, but if it had those cards, Blackwing Technician is a nice card to have because it's going to help you keep up into that mid game. Grim Patron. I'm going to take a quick break. I haven't had dinner yet. Couch for Thin Mints. Excellent. This is one of the very first cards spoiled, along with Blackwing Technician. When this minion survives damage, summon another Grim Patron. And we saw this deck really go off in the live stream today. Man, we saw Grim Patron with Warsong Commander and Battle Rage. And what other cards? Whirlwind, Inner Rage, Deathspite, Procking. And we just saw Grim Patron after Grim Patron with Charge come into play, and it was really impressive. I'm wondering if this card will lead to a mid-range combo aggro warrior tech like that. But outside of a specified deck, Grim Patron really doesn't have a home in this meta. We'll see what... This is the kind of card that's fun to come out in these sets, because when dedicated deck builders get their hands on them, you can see some really cool things happen. And I'm looking forward to seeing what people will build with Grim Patron. The potential was shown off today. But until that point, it's not going to be just an easy shoo-in into any current decks that are out there right now. On, we've got Hungry Dragon. 4-cost 5/6. This is the mid-range dragon tech I'm telling you guys to just be wary of. Battlecry, summon a random 1-cost minion for your opponent. I saw, I think, the math today. On average, your opponent's probably going to get 2/1, 2/1 or 2/2. Possibly, 3/2 is in there. We saw on stream that a Shield Bearer ruined our Wary Heroes days when they tried to trade with the Dragonling Mechanic. Blackrock Technician. Sorry, Dragonling Mechanic is something completely different. Obviously, very overcosted. If you consider on average that they're going to get a 2-attack minion out of it, this is more like a 5/4 for 4, if we're going for pure stats. So the stats actually do work out, but the tempo created by you having the opportunity to clear out the 1-cost minion first is nice. But On an empty board, this is not OP, and I don't think the card's OP in any stretch of the imagination. On an empty board, I think it's better for your opponent. On a board where you can trade with the 1-cost minion and keep the 5/6, it's better for you. Very interesting card, though. I like the concept. It's a great mid-range dragon. These are the kinds of cards we're going to be seeing a lot of, and I think these dragon deck builders are going to be able to take their pick of these mid-range dragons. It's going to be pretty cool. Dark Iron Skulker. 5 for 4/3 battle cry, deal 2 damage to all undamaged enemy minions. Rogue doesn't necessarily need that. They have Blade Flurry. They have what's the other one? Fan of Knives. They're not really stretching for AoE, and they don't really need a 5-drop to do it. It's a cool effect, though. And now Rogue does have an AoE, has like a mini Consecrate on the stick. Like, this is very strong if we're going to be seeing like a control Rogue build that counters aggro, where it will just clear a lot of dudes on turn 5, because if they have a board if your opponent has a board that's 3 dudes that have 2 max health or whatever, Dark Iron Skulker is an insane tempo play. But I don't think we're going to be seeing this in at least the current Rogue iterations right now. But a very cool card, and I like that Rogue has this card for later, and it's a good tech-in if Rogue is having trouble with these heavy aggros. But in general, Rogue does have a good matchup against heavy aggro right now, so I'm wondering where this card will come into play in the future if it does. Ren Blackhand, 7/8/4 battle cry. If you're holding a dragon, destroy a legendary minion. This card is great. We've seen it get played a lot today in the live stream, and since everybody's always running legendaries, I think there's always going to be a home in your deck for Ren Blackhand. It's a 7-drop that has basically the stat distribution isn't great for value outside of destroying the legendary minion, but remember, you're already just killing a legendary for free. You're killing a Ysera. This is like 12 damage. Battlecry deal 12 damage. That's pretty insane. And considering people are going to be running more dragons, there are a lot of legendary dragons. Ren Blackhand will be a good option to kill a lot of them. Especially if there's another dragon down the list that's going to be, I'll get to later, that is out of BGH range, and Red and Blackhand would be a great option to kill that. The nice thing about the stat distribution is you can put your opponent on a clock if he does have no answer for it. You can put him on a really quick one. Or alternatively, you can get a 3-for-1 out of, basically, you can get you're pretty much guaranteed to get a 1-for-1 out of Ren Blackhand in these late mid-game to the beginning of the late game scenarios. And you're also pretty likely to get a 2-for-1 if they clear with a Frostbolt and Hero Power or Flame. Well, Flame Strike wouldn't be a strict 2-for-1, but you got my point. And so the point of this card is to get that 2-for-1, which is pretty much guaranteed. And then if you can't get the 2-for-1, your opponent doesn't have an answer for it, you're gonna swing them in the face 3 times and win. So it's a cool card for that. I like this card. I think it's going to be seeing plenty of play. Axe Flinger, whenever this minion takes damage, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. Very interesting card for the warrior class, and this might, along with the Grim Patron, bring a new breed of mid-range burst warrior, where your opponent's going to take a lot of damage as you deal a lot of damage to your own stuff. This is again a card does not have a home currently in any warrior lists, but this is kind of an exciting time to be building for someone to just take these cards, throw them into a new list, spend some time refining it, and maybe take the ladder by storm one day with aggro warrior. You may have heard it here first. This is an exciting concept that these new these new, what do you call them? The Dark Iron Dwarf cards. They're all kind of built around that same concept. A Dark Iron Dwarf aggro warrior might be in the cards for this season, and it might be a really powerful deck. Time will tell, obviously, but I'm excited to see it. Lava Shock, Shaman spell, 2 damage, 2 mana. Unlock your overloaded mana crystals. This is another interesting card. Obviously, 2 mana for 2 damage isn't great. Shaman does have a lot of access to spell power, which will make this card a little bit better. Unlocking overloaded mana crystals is an ability that Shamans have not had access to yet, though. And I'm wondering how powerful it will be to reset the tempo. Now, keep in mind, it unlocks your overloaded mana crystals the turn you use it, and if you have locked crystals for next turn. So say you're on turn 8, right? You play your Earth Elemental, you play your Lightning Bolt, you're going to be overloaded for 4 next turn. You can use that last 2 mana instead of toteming to Lava Shock, and then you will you'll unlock those mana crystals for your next turn. Or you could use it on the next turn. I think it's better to use it the turn before, though, because it's basically like soft overloading for 2. If you're guaranteed to commit 2 mana to your Lava Shock, you better have a play that uses all the rest of your mana. But I think that the real value would be to do when you have your crystals locked that turn, you do an overload play, and then you unlock crystals for both turns. That's going to be where the real value can come in for Lava Shock. And there is a new Shaman card that is going to be using some overload. We'll see how this fits together. Let's see if this brings back Unbound Elemental. We haven't seen that card in a long time. It can be a very powerful card, and if you stack your overloads and then Lava Shock, there's no downside to having a quick 4/6 Unbound Elemental. So we'll see. This is a lot of wait and see cards in this set. We'll see how useful Lava Shock is, especially because that might be competing for Crackle. And are you going to take 2 damage, unlock your overloads, or are you going to take 2 damage, 3 to 6, or 2 mana, 3 to 6 damage? That's a tricky question, and we'll see what deck builders choose. Dragon Egg, 1 mana, 0/2. When this minion takes damage, summon a 2/1 Whelp. This is going to be a hard card to enable, I think. At only 2 health, it's going to be very tricky to get maximum value out of this card right now is in that warrior deck, that mystical, self-damaging warrior deck. You turn 1 Dragon Egg, turn 2. This is the most Trump dream scenario I can dream up is turn 1 Dragon Egg, turn 2 Cruel Taskmaster, get a 2/1, attack that 2/1 into something, get another 2/1, then you have a turn 2 board of 2 2/1s and a 2/2. And that does leave you in a pretty strong position board-wise, but it is definitely not insurmountable. You could see a home in some kind of aggro deck where you're dealing damage to yourself. Like this could be a new archetype we see, and you could give it charge with Warsong Commander, which is what we saw in the stream today. But we didn't see Dragon Egg in that list. I'm wondering how useful it would even be in that list, or if you'd prefer the more standard Lepronelm 1-drop. In what? Basically, you have to hit the face twice with your Whelps or with the Dragon Egg. You have to get 4 damage in order for it to even really start to equal a Lepronome. So I'm wondering what's going to be more valuable in these aggro decks. This is another wait-and-see card for me, but I think my feelings on it are a little bit less optimistic than the other cards. Dragonkin Sorcerer. This is another interesting card, I think. 4435, so it's Senjin's Shield Master status, which means you have to have an effect. When you target this minion with a spell, gain +1/+1. That is a ridiculous effect. We could see this in Paladin, in Priest. These are two classes that, and particularly Priest, because Priest, we've lately seen the rise of Valen's Chosen, a card that many people thought would be just okay, but it turns out Valen's Chosen's a monster, and if you target your Dragonkin Sorcerer with this, you get a 6/10 for effectively 7. And that is crazy. 6/10, spell damage +1, and you can heal it, and you can even buff it even more with Powered Shield. Is that the name of it? Yeah. So Dragonkin Sorcerer can be a just bonkers card. I think it's going to be better in Priest than Paladin, because Priest has more defensive buffs that are a little bit more synergistic with Dragonkin Sorcerer. But this card might be one of the better mid-range dragons. We're going to have to wait and see. If Dragon Priest does take off, you can be for sure this is going to be a part of it. Otherwise, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm saying that a lot, but that's the case. Flamewalker, a lot of classes are getting 3-drops. Seems to be a trend. I think Warlock, Druid, Mage all got 3-drops in this set. So let's take a look at this one. After you cast a spell, deal 2 damage randomly split among all enemies. So wait, you cast a spell, you get half of an arcane, or like 2/3 of an arcane missiles. That's an incredibly powerful effect, and it's going to help Flamewalker trade against aggro. This is going to be a big buff to mid-range mage if this card finds a home in it. Right now, the 3-drops for mage are a little questionable. There was Sitsbuer from the new class, or from Goblins vs. Gnomes, and that didn't really take off. 3/3 spell damage +1 doesn't trade well with 2-drops. 4 health is going to be great for trading well with 2-drops, especially with this effect. Oh man, this effect is going to be crazy for trading with 2-drops. And the other one is Kirin Tor Mage, 4/3, 3 health, not good for trading with 2-drops. You're pretty much pigeonholed into playing with secret. Obviously, having a secret played for free can be a crazy tempo swing, but you're pigeonholed into playing secrets, and not all mage decks are going to be secret mage decks. And this might pave the way for a non-secret mid-range mage, which would be a very cool deck concept to see. I think Flamewalker will be added into quite a few mage decks in the future. Imp Gang Boss. Here's the other 3-drop for Warlock. When this minion takes damage, summon a 1/1 Imp. I think this might. Right now, our Demon Lock decks are a little bit more mid to late game oriented. This is a early to mid game demon. It's a pretty exciting demon, I'm not gonna lie. Getting free 1/1s, we've seen how powerful that is. It has better stats than Imp Master. It doesn't force itself to take damage every turn. Like, Imp Master is basically, the first turn you played is 1/3, summon a 1/1. This can be a 2/3 with a 1/1. And Warlock doesn't have as many ways as, say, Warrior to get the free dudes. You could Mortal Coil your own Imp Gang Boss, but that doesn't really seem like value whatsoever. It's just gonna really be, you're gonna trade him into 2-drops when you play him on curve, and you're gonna get auxiliary value out of the Imps, which could be a really good tool for a mid-range Warlock deck. Especially with the, like, you could follow it up with Void Caller on turn 4 on curve, and that could lead to some really insane. Basically, this is gonna kind of just set you up for those Void Caller turns, I think, and that could be a very useful effect. We'll see what players do with it, but I'm liking this card a little bit. Core Rager, 4/4/4/4 Beast in Hunter. Battlecry, if your hand is empty, gain +3/+3. This is an interesting card. I don't think it's actually going to be run. Right now, mid-range Hunter, right now, I don't think it has a spot, first of all, in aggro Hunter, just because Top decking something that doesn't directly hit your opponent's face that turn isn't great. Dropping a 7/7 is always cool, but your opponent should have ways to deal with it, because you're not really dropping really hard to deal with value threats in Face Hunter. So your opponent's answers will probably be saved for this. By the time you have a Core Rager that is a 7/7, I think you'll be behind on the board. So I don't think it has a spot in Aggro Hunter. In Mid-Range Hunter, Mid-Range Hunter has kind of this nice little distinction where it doesn't really have BGH targets, and giving your opponent BGH value doesn't feel amazing. Mid-Range Hunter right now does kind of run out of steam after a little while, and Core Rager could be just that extra value power threat to seal the game away. But right now, Web Spinner does a pretty good job of generating those threats. Obviously, curving into high main is amazing, and you're not really looking to burn your hand as much as an aggro deck would. And for an aggro deck, I don't like burning my hand for a 7/7, because then I'm paying 4 mana for something that's not hitting my opponent's face. So those are just some precursory thoughts. I could be convinced about Core Rager, but I'm not really liking him right now. Blackwing Corruptor, Fire Elemental Light. If you're holding a dragon, deal 3 damage. He is not a dragon himself, but he is an awesome turn 5 curve for a dragon deck. It'll help you clean up something in trade. I mean, it's just Fire Elemental. There's not really much to say. Fire Elemental is an amazing card. It has 4 health. That can be dealt with a lot easier than the 5 health of Fire Elemental. Talking about 5 drops at trade, like, this is going to have to occupy the 5 spot. And the 5 spot right now is Sludge Belcher's home. Blackwing Corruptor trades pretty decently well with Sludge Belcher, even if you don't point the 3 damage at it. Right now, I'm thinking this is a pretty good looking card. 5 damage is a hard number to come by right now. The stats are a little undercosted, obviously. That's the concern. But if you can get value... Alright, we'll just let this autoplay. If you can get value out of the 3 damage, then this is going to be a great card. And obviously, you're going to need a dragon in hand. This will be a dragon archetype staple, I'm pretty sure. Dragon's Breath. Mage spell, 5 mana, costs 4 damage, costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. Mage isn't really looking for burn. I'm gonna say it. It's not really something super necessary, you know? Like, they don't need an extra burn spell. You've got Frostbolt and Ping, 4 mana, deal 4 damage. And you're gonna have Frostbolt with the new, I can't even remember the name of the 3-drop. That could possibly add on that 4th damage to whatever you're hitting. Obviously, the costing 1 less for each minion that dies is a Blackrock Mountain theme right now of a lot of spells and a lot of minions. This might be the first one we've seen on this preview, though. But the effect you're getting for potentially... You have to, like, basically Flame Strike 5 minions, or Flame Strike a bunch of minions to get this for free. And I don't really see the value out of dealing 4 damage for free in a deck that needs to, that already has so much burn. This might lead to, this might be good in Freeze Major and other like a new mage archetype that runs very, very few minions and just runs a lot of burn, because we've seen Freeze Mages just run out of steam, literally, before, where they're just out of burn spells. They use every single... This happens against Control Warrior, in the Control Warrior matchup a lot. We could see something like Malagos Mage, where you Malagos, you, like, I don't know, could you even... Well, you could Arcane Missiles for, like, 8. I don't know if you can get... well, there are ways to reduce the cost of your spells, so you could Malagos and, like, arcane explosion into Dragon's Breath the face for 9 or something. There's a lot of silliness maybe you could do with Malygos. And this might lead again to more creative deck building, but right now in the current Mage iterations, I don't see this having a home. Nefarian, 9 mana, Dragon, 8/8. That's what we like to see. Battle Cry. Add 2 random spells to your hand from your opponent's class. This effect is awesome. This is exactly what we like to see out of these new Blackrock Mountain cards. I was so hyped when I saw this. As a finisher, he adds cards to your hand. You don't know the power of the cards to your hand. You could be playing against a paladin and then get 2 redemptions, and you will just cry. Or you can be playing against priests, get a turn 10 mind control. You could be playing against mage, get a flame strike and an Echo of Medivh, like we saw on the stream today, which is pretty hype. He didn't win him the game, but it was a great play. Yes, the variance is there. There's the word random. We're in hashtag RNG territory. I think we're gonna have to wait and see how powerful this effect actually is. Obviously, it's not like it's an immediate effect. It's a battle cry. It happens immediately when you drop on the field, but it's not as immediate of a board impact as like a Ragnaros, because you still have to pay for the spells. It's just giving you some card advantage. It's kind of like dropping Neptulon, but with spells from your opponent. And Neptulon has turned out to be a pretty good card, so I have high hopes for Nefarian here. He could be a good finisher in some of these new dragon archetypes we might see. I don't see him really fitting into old archetypes as much, but in a dragon deck, I think Nefarian will be around, and I think he will be a very popular choice. And I like what I see. This card looks freaking sweet. And the animation was amazing earlier. Wow. Draconid Crusher. 6/6 for 6. Battle Cry. If your opponent has 15 or less health, gain +3/+3. This is, again, kind of like Red and Black Hand, where you could put your opponent on a serious clock with a 9/9. And it's nice you can actually kind of, like, sort of choose if you want to trigger if you want it to be a BGH target or not. It's interesting in that way. It could be used in some decks as, like, really... We talk a lot about how BGH is kind of... Well, I know Brian Kibler talks about how, in basically every single patch preview, how BGH kind of stifles the metagame. But right now, there are really 2 ways to play around BGH, which is, 1, have 0 BGH targets, which is the old Ramp Druid lists of January, or mid-range Hunter lists right now. Or 2, to overload it, have so many targets they don't know what to do with, a la Handlock, running Molten Giant, Ragnaros, Dr. Boom, all the cards. So this could be an extra BGH target that, when either 1 or 2 of the BGHs are exposed or are eliminated, you have a 9/9 sitting out there for 6, and that can be insane. We're gonna see if I think the mid-range dragon lists that are gonna pop up choose this over the other mid-range dragons, because there are some other very strong mid-range dragons, especially in this 6 spot. The 6 spot might be hotly contested in this new set, and so we're gonna see how useful this is. But in the more aggressive mid-range lists, I think we're gonna see him. He is just dropping a 9/9 is gonna be a big deal, and some people are just not gonna have an answer for it. 9 is a lot of health if you don't have an instant removal like Big Game Hunter. Volcanic 6 for 6/4. 6/4 is much easier to deal with than 6/6, let me remind you. But he costs the 1 less for each minion that died that turn. Now, people were talking up this card a lot. You can have like a pseudo Molten Giant turn where Flame Strike an entire Paladin board filled with battle mustarded tokens. And then you drop 2 6/4s. 6/4s are obviously, again, that number is way easier to deal with. Deathbite, True Silver Champion, lots of 4-drops and 5-drops have 4 attack. It's going to be way easier to deal with than the 9/9 you can get for 6. But if you can, the point is you're not going to play this card for 6 mana. You're going to play it for 3, 2, 1, maybe 0 mana, and there it's going to be a pretty big tempo swing. And I think it could create some more aggressive mid-range dragon decks. Maybe with the Dragon and Crusher sharing that spot at the top of the curve. I'm not sure what shell we're going to see it in right now, but I like that Blizzard is letting us create more aggressive mid-range decks with classes other than Hunter, with cards like this Volcanic Drake. I think this is going to be a super fun card to see in this new meta. Here's the dragon I was talking about that dodges Big Game Hunter. His name is Cramagus. 6/8 for 8. Whenever you draw a card, put another copy into your hand. He doubles your natural card draw. He's going to double your life tap. He's going to double cards like Mana Tide, Totem, Arcade Intellect. Imagine sprinting for 8 cards. Imagine Cramagus Prep. No, you can't Cramagus Prep sprint in the same turn. That'd be insane. He's a much more nuanced card advantage finisher than Nefarian is. Nefarian has style. Nefarian is, give me your class cards, I'm going to kill you with them, and you better freaking deal with it. Cramagus is, I'm going to use my card draw engines to just overrun you in a new way. And I really like Cramagus in slower decks, maybe not even necessarily dragon decks. He is a cool card. I think he's gonna synergize with like any class that has a lot of card draw. It's gonna be really interesting to see what decks he sees play in. I think he has a very promising competitive future. I don't know what shell he'll fit in. Probably a slower dragon deck, but I like him a lot. Demon Wrath was spoiled today. Deal 2 damage to all. Well, we're finally getting into the card spoiled today. Demon Wrath, deal 2 damage to all non-demon minions. This is an interesting card. It's giving Warlock an AoE for 3 mana. Right now they have 2 AoEs at 4 mana. That means it can be tricky to fit in cards on that curve. You can swap out Hellfire for Demon Wrath in your Demon Lock deck. If you're worried about dealing damage to yourself or dealing damage to all your minions. If you're running cards like Imp Gangmaster, Imp Game Boss, you won't damage him with this, but maybe you want to damage your Imp Gang Boss with that. This is the 3rd AoE for Warlock, basically. And now players are going to have to make this choice over what AoEs they want. And I'm going to be very curious to see when Demon Wrath's put in. Obviously, it's better you can play it a turn earlier than your other AoEs. I think it's just going to be kind of a meta tech call against if aggro becomes popular, because playing an AoE a turn earlier is a huge deal. And Demon Wrath versus most aggro lists is going to be very strong. It's obviously weaker versus Zoo. Zoo is running demons. This won't kill any... It won't kill any demons, not just your own. So Flame Imps will live through Demon Wrath, and Flame Imps can be a pain to deal with if you have Demon Wrath in your deck over, say, Hellfire. So, I think this is a tech call card, but a very interesting one. Dragon Consort. Paladin 5/5. Battlecry, the next dragon you play costs 2 less. Interesting to note, the next dragon you play, not necessarily this turn, or not necessarily ever. You can wait 5 turns and then drop a turn 7 Ysera with Follow the Rules on the board, or whatever. This is interesting, and I think this card will enable Dragon Paladin, because this might be the strongest class-specific card that synergizes with dragons, in my personal opinion. And so I think Dragon Paladin might be in the future, enabling you to basically innervate out a dragon. And you get a 5/5, but, I mean, it basically lets you innervate out the dragon next turn. Dragon Paladin, I think, has a lot of promise after seeing this card. Now, 5/5 for 5 isn't too undercosted. Being at 5 health is a big deal. Like we said, going between 4 and 5 health is pretty important. So, Dragon Consort's going to do a lot of work on the 5-drop slot. It trades with Sludge Belcher. I love it when things trade with Sludge Belcher because I don't like that card. It's been around for a year, dominating our meta. So I'm glad to see new 5-drops start to challenge it. I'm excited about this direction for Blackrock Mountain. And I'll be playing Dragon Paladin because I think I might enjoy it a lot more than the current mid-range Paladin list. So I might be doing some experimentation there. I hope you guys will be too. Druid of the Flame. Here's another 3-drop. Choose one, transform into a 5/2 minion or a 2/5 minion. Very curious. One thing to note is both of these are beasts. I think Blizzard is going to be slowly but surely working towards Druid having beasts. Beast synergy in Druid. We still have Druid of the Fang. And Druid of the Flame, Druid of the Fang is going to be a curve option into a 7/7. So I might see some play. As far as Druid of the Flame itself goes, I feel 75% of the time you'll choose the 2/5 here. And the question is, how important is a 2/5 in Druid? Druid already has a 2/4 that can ramp. The name of the card is escaping me right now, but it's the card that either both you and your opponent draw a card, or both you and your opponent ramp a mana. And that card doesn't really see any play at all. In current mid-range lists, I don't really know if this will take the place of Shade of Naxxramas or Harvest Golem. Those cards are just so incredibly of value. The 5/2 is a better top deck versus some classes than Shade of Naxxramas. That's the time where you're going to want to see it turn into a 5/2 is when you are at the end of the game. You have board control. You just want to get burst at the end. You just turn it into a 5/2, and then if it lives, you Savage Roar. That adds 7 damage to your Savage. So you can play greedy with it. It's kind of like playing greedy with Ancient of War, which we really never see happen. But it could happen. Obviously, turning into a 5/2 is better than turning into a 10/5 because things will... Well, it's better and it's worse. But at that 3-drop slot, it's an interesting choice. I'm wondering... I'm not thinking it's really going to replace any of the current Druid 3-drops, but it gives us an option. It gives us a Beast option, which might be even more curious, but I'm curious to see what this card will do in the future more than what it will do today. Emperor Thaurissan. 6 mana, 5/5. At the end of your turn, reduce the cost of cards in your hand by 1. It's not a battle cry. That is a persistent effect. If Emperor Thaurissan stays alive, you can innervate. If he stays alive for 2 turns, you can innervate out basically your entire hand. This card is redonk. And he has that immediate... It's an immediate effect. It's not an immediate board effect. That's what's tricky. It's kind of like Nefarian. He has an effect on the cards in your hand. He doesn't have an effect on the cards on the board. You can create... He's a tempo creator, but he's a tempo creator later. Basically, he's undercosted for his body, like Sylvanas, but Sylvanas has a much more immediate board impact. Sylvanas is a card that challenges your board immediately. This card challenges your board immediately in a different way, in that he can let the tempo swing out of your control for your opponent. Even in the worst case scenario, this hits like 3 cards in your hand, reduces their cost by 1. That can still be an incredibly powerful effect. You can reduce your A-drops to 7 and then curve with Emperor Thaurissan. Or you can create turns that were never possible just by having a couple of spells have their cost reduced. And basically, if you can hit six cards with this, you're playing him for free. And if you have board control and you keep him alive for more than 1 turn, you can snowball the game out of your control with just overwhelming mana efficiency. This card is insane. I think he'll be played in the later game mid-range decks. I don't know if he can fit in more aggressive ones. We saw better aggressive options with the 6/6 that turns into a 9/9, as well as the play the 6/4 for possibly free. I don't know if he fits into aggressive lists very well, but in the mid-game lists that are in the less aggressive lists that are looking for more value, I think this might just be an auto-include. Fireguard Destroyer, Shaman, 4 for a 3/6. Water Elemental stats. Oh yeah. Battle Cry, gain 1 to 4 attack. Amazing. Overload 1. Overload obviously is a pain in the butt, but you can get a 6/6 for turn 4. That's insane. I think this card will see plenty of play in Shaman. Shaman's 4-drop situation is a little bit shaky still. The Ogre card from Goblins vs. Gnomes didn't take off because it was a 5/4. Being a 3/6 is going to be crazy. Even if it's silenced, you're okay with that. You still have a Water Elemental. Getting any more crazy, this guy can just take over a board. And I'm looking forward to trying this card out in my Shaman lists. Gang Up. This card is interesting. Choose a minion, shuffle 3 copies of it into your deck. Again, this is anti-tempo. And this is, believe it or not, this is anti-card advantage. Because you're paying 1 mana to not affect the board. You're paying 1 mana to basically just... You're paying 2 mana. What this card equates to is, if you run 2 copies of it, you're running a 34-card deck with 6 cards that you get to choose in the game. But you're paying 2 mana in-game for that privilege. It's a really interesting card. This is the kind of card that you can really only have in Hearthstone, which is amazing. You can choose enemy minions with it, which might make it ridiculous. You can just copy opponent's minions, take them, put them in your deck, throw them at your opponent. The most obvious synergy for this card is going to be Mill Rogue. You can copy Cold Light Oracles, and they're going to keep you from milling out before your opponent. This card might actually put Mill Rogue into a decent competitive place. I don't know if it actually will, but it'll be interesting to see. That's the only obvious synergy I can think of. Right now, this doesn't fit in Oil Rogue, the most popular rogue deck at the moment. It's way too slow. Oil Rogue needs to just be focused on killing you with a big burst combo. This doesn't help with that. But Control Rogue might run it if we do see a control list. And I think that'd be super interesting. Majordomo Executus. The second to last, did we go over all the legends so far? We went over Rend. Yeah, this is the last legend that we have to cover. Majordomo Executus, Death Rattle 9/7 for 9. Replace your hero with Ragnaros the Firelord. Unlike, this is the second hero replacing card to be seen in Hearthstone. This is a neutral. Any class can replace their class with Ragnaros the Firelord now. And not only that, he's going to be super available, unlike Ragnaros. It's like, remember guys, this is like Nexramas. If anyone pays $25 or whatever, you have access to all these cards. So, anybody can replace their hero with Ragnaros the Firelord. He is attacked to a death rattle on a very intimidating body. Just so you know, what Ragnaros does is, when your hero becomes Ragnaros, your hero goes down to 8 HP, max, which is scary, but you get a 2-mana hero power, which is deal 8 damage to any random enemy. And remember, unlike Jiraxxus, you can trade Majordomo on your turn, get Ragnaros on that turn, use his effect immediately. So, you can use that tempo swing with Majordomo. He reminds me a lot of Stalag, Thaddeus, Fugan, Stalag, and Thaddeus. Where when those cards come into play, you have to really think about how you want to answer them. Obviously, silence will just take it out, but then you're still left with a 9/7 body that's very strong. It's a BGH target, but you might not mind it being BGH'd necessarily, depending on the situation. I'm trying to think of a competitive application for this card. Basically, what will happen is on turn 9, you can drop this 9/7 and say, you have to deal with this 9/7. And even if you do deal with this 9/7, I become Ragnaros the flippin' Fire Lord. And that's sweet. I think we're going to see a lot of play out of this card early, because it's so freaking fun. But I think in the end, in a competitive game, putting yourself at 8 health is not the smartest decision. Draxus gets by because he, first of all, the deck that Draxus is in is built around being at low health. You can live with being at low health with taunts. Maybe we'll see a taunt-based Major Domo Executus kind of deck, or you try to survive around that. But the other thing is Draxus synergizes with those taunt givers a lot better because he creates 6/6s instead of dealing 8 random damage. So, Major Domo Executus, awesome card, super cool. Don't think it's going to be seeing much play. Quick Shot, the last Hunter card deals. How many cards are left? A couple more cards. Deal 3 damage. If your hand is empty, draw a card. This is going to be great for Hunter lists because Hunter lists run out of cards. Like I was saying, this is kind of the ultimate top deck. This is a really good... We've seen Dark Bomb is deal 3 damage vanilla for 2 mana, and that's a good card. That sees a lot of play in a lot of Warlock lists right now, especially after the nerf to Soulfire. So dealing, like having 3 damage in your hand is never bad, even if it's vanilla 3 damage. The conditional is great. You can have it as a great top deck in Face Hunter. You can top deck Quick Shot to Kill Command to Huffer to Quick Shot to Huffer to Hero Power just to do crazy burst. Quick Shot I think we'll see play in Aggro Hunter. I think it might see play in Mid-Range Hunter. I think this is a very solid card. Resurrect. Alright, we're getting into the priest stuff. We haven't actually seen the exclusive priest stuff yet. Resurrect summons a random friendly minion that died this game. This is a super interesting card, and since it's only friendly minions, it's way easier to control than, say, Mind Games or anything that pulls out of your opponent's deck, because you know what you're going to get. Say you play your turn 3 Injured Blade Master, and it dies to Frostbolt. Next turn, you resurrect, and then drop a 2-drop. You have a 4/7. That's awesome. Because then, you know, Injured Blade Master is the only character that died that turn. If you build your deck around this card, you can always have good targets for it. And I think this card is actually incredibly strong. The question is, being that since it's in Priest, we're going to see if we can build a consistent deck out of it first, before we go off saying it's OP. I remember thinking in my GVG preview, Vol'jin I thought was the strongest card in the set, bar none. I ended up being a little bit wrong. I still think he's an incredibly strong card, but being in Priest means he is not as strong as if he were in another class. I think this card is crazy good. I'm going to be excited to build decks around it. We'll see what kind of potential we can get. I think it might be the 2-drop spell that Priest needs. We'll see, though. Revenge! Deal 1 damage to all minions. If you have 12 or less health, deal 3 damage instead. A 2-drop spell. If you're not at 12 or less health, it's only a Whirlwind. If you're at 12 or less health, it's a Hellfire for 2. I don't think Warrior really needs it. You know, it's... Mortal Strike doesn't see much play, and it has a pretty cool 12 or less health thing. But maybe we'll see it in an aggro warrior list if that is to pop up. And I like that Blizzard's kind of giving warrior the tools for aggro. But again, aggro warrior doesn't want to really be clearing their own minions necessarily. I don't know if this will really have a home in that deck. It's kind of it's a card that leaves me puzzled, kind of like the mage card that deals 4 damage and costs 1 less for each damage, or for each minion that died. Don't know where I could see this being played. Solemn Vigil, 5-drop, draw 2 cards for Paladin, costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. I think this is gonna just be an instant 2 of in mid-range and control lists for Paladin. Its synergy with Battle Mustard is crazy. You trade all of your Mustard tokens. You trade maybe it kills an opponent's card. You draw 2 cards for 1 mana. That's awesome! Solemn Vigil is going to be just a great card. And I think if we're going to see these dragon lists in Paladin, you can see that combined with the Drake that comes down with the same effect. We could see crazy tempo swings out of Paladin in ways we hadn't really envisioned before. And I think this is just going to be an instant include in those decks. Dynamic Break. Twilight Whelp. 2-1 for 1. Battle Cry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +2 health. You get a Zombie Chow here, but you don't necessarily heal the opponent. So there's no downside to Twilight Whelp, really. He's an adorable little dragon. Look how cute he is. Oh my gosh, that guy. Priest might still stick with Zombie Chow, though. Even though Twilight Whelp loses the drawback, but Priest could turn the drawback to its advantage with Auchenai. We don't really see that combo very much anymore, but Twilight Whelp might be run in these dragon lists instead of Zombie Chow. I think otherwise, if mid-range Priest can, or if the Priest lists that we've seen before kind of continue to stick around, Zombie Chow might still be the choice. Interesting card, I like it. Obviously having a 2-3 for Priest is going to be great. Anything that they could heal back to full health is going to just provide them, can always provide them great value. And I think that's a good spot for Twilight Whelp to be in. Volcanic Lumber, the last card. It's a Druid 9 for 7/8 taunt. Costs 1 less for each minion that died this turn. This card, I'm not a huge fan of. Let's think of the synergies. It synergizes with Swipe, killing, you know, a bunch of really small stuff. You could play him for ridiculously cheap off of a Swipe. You can play him for possibly cheap off of a Force of Nature clearing. Force of Nature clears 3 2-drops. You play this for 3 mana. But that's still a pretty late game play. I'm not really seeing ways to cheat this out stupid early, like I could with the Dragon. And even if you do cheat this out early, you could still lose tempo to it via Black Knight or via Big Game Hunter. And the effects here aren't really necessarily as valuable as some of the other cards that died at Big Game Hunter in this set. I think it's the only taunt that was added in this set. If I'm not mistaken, I don't think there was a single other taunt. So Druid obviously isn't really hurting for taunts, and this is better than Ironbark Protector, don't get me wrong, because it's an Ironbark Protector that's on fire, of course. But I'm not really sure if this is going to see play even in kind of ramp lists. Ramp has better taunts, I believe. I still think Ancient of War is going to be better for a 5/10 that dodges the Big Game Hunter. And so I'm not really sure how competitively viable this card is going to be. Alright, that's the end of my spiel. Thank you guys for sticking around for my impromptu Blackrock Mountain show. I was really happy to have y'all here.